the 6th of May, 2022. Ooh. Thanks for tuning in to my official YouTube channel. There are reasons why I'm doing the lighting like this. It's going to be all scary. So make sure that you subscribe to my official YouTube channel. And go to my website, www.susanbling.com, and go see what I've been working on. So I'm giving the forewarning, it's gonna be scary, you know, cause rawr. I don't know, I haven't ever had anybody tell me that I could be scary. So I'm giving the forewarning, so I don't know if some people might think that I could be scary. I've been told that I have a scary laugh at times, though it depends on what I laugh at. So it depends on how my laugh goes, and I don't listen to my laugh, so I wouldn't know which would be scary in that reference. So I'm going to be scary, right? This is why the lighting, because you know those who have the Hollywood background, okay? So, so in 7 days, so remember today is the 6th of May, 2022, and it's a Friday. Ooh, so I'm gonna be scary. And so here's my scariness doing that. So, I don't know how some people view things. There hasn't been that real discussion for me to have that knowledge. I do know that the first movie I saw after I woke up from my coma, because I was a whole 18 years old. Yeah, I could actually watch something above G-rated, and because I was 18 years old, I could choose on my own. Yeah, rawr. See, scary movie. Rawr. And so, those particular factors of, I had chosen the documentary version of The Exorcist. Yeah, so rawr! Because, today is the 6th of May, 2022, and it's a Friday. So rawr, being so rawr right now. So just so you know, this is me being over dramatic. See, because the lights are over there, and that's overhead to be dramatic. Okay, because, I've dealt with a lot of different people over my life. And I was born in the 1980s, and so I don't know what Hollywood has dealt with regarding certain types of people, though I'm sure that there are certain similarities as to the way, because of New Jersey, where I was born and raised, however, there's the 5 boroughs of New York City. And in some of these boroughs, you have Juilliard, you have, of course, Broadway. You have different news companies and so on and so forth. So I don't know how Californians deal with this. Because of course in California you have Hollywood, though the different Hollywood studios throughout the different areas, I would guesstimate, are not only in the Hollywood area, they're probably throughout the different areas of California. And so where the East Coast has the area of New Jersey, to be honest, because while certain individuals from different areas of the United States of America flock one way or another, usually they flock from whichever Midwest or Southern state to either New York City or to Hollywood. It depends on what their particular preferences are, I would guesstimate. And so where in Hollywood, all of the directors and producers and so on and so forth, they have to, however they inform the individuals regarding that, there is at the very minimum, well, you can take the difference between my biological sister and I, as far as how we were raised, okay? So my biological father was far more of an influence in my life than my biological mother. Sure, I was obviously born because my biological mother's uterus and all that stuff. Rawr, so scary, I said the U word. Because I know that the, LGBTQ peers, I know that particular word, there's a few words, some LGBTQ, specifically males biologically, I have made the joke, I have wondered a few things, okay? So I'm gonna be over dramatic, okay? I'm gonna be scary, but I still have to be satirical because of how I am. And or sarcastic. Sarcasm, satirical, that's pretty much one and the same to me. So, okay. So I have wondered personally if regarding, depending on what you're gonna be, as far as, your particular sexuality or what have you, if, so one of two things. If you're gonna be a gay male, how quick it's either you pop out, because, get me out of here, I don't want to see this. Sort of an allergic reaction to the area. Similarly, though, in that capacity of where it's like, no, I don't want to go through there, and, don't want to get out. No, I don't want to see it, I don't want to be near it, Or in my situation, I guess maybe, I should just be a cesarean. Yeah, I should totally just be a cesarean so that way I don't have to be near that particular vicinity. It's okay. I don't really mind other aspects, but, excuse me. I just, thanks, but no thanks. I don't want to, so I've kind of wondered that. And then in comparison, as far as if you're going to be a lesbian, well then it's one of those, no, totally going to chill out. No, it's fine, I'm going to make my way, whatever, that's fine, I'll take my time, sort of. I guess it depends, and I've made that joke a few times. Not very often, because usually when I've made that joke, sometimes I've been in, the wrong place at the wrong time when I've made this joke. And so usually when I've made this joke, there's usually somebody in the area and they're like, how dare you? Who do you think you are to think you can speak on behalf of? Well, I'm a pansexual and I've given birth to 2 children, one of each gender. And both of them did not want to leave my uterus. And so I actually had, in one particular situation, this was in DFW, there's one particular female who was like, well, why? Why would you think that just because you had given birth to a child of each gender, that you would have any idea of what it is? Well, then there's these experiences that I've had as a child. And so I had used the term lipstick lesbian to this particular individual. And she said, excuse me, let me explain to you the actual differences as to what a lipstick lesbian is compared to a femme. Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. I was just born and raised in New Jersey in the 1980s and 1990s. Go ahead, why don't you let me know in comparison to who I grew up around? Why don't you let me know what the old guard in that capacity would, clarify that as? No, that's fine. They use the term lipstick lesbian, but okay, since you're a modern lesbian now, okay, that's fine. So now you use the word femme in comparison to just, okay, because of the physical attributes. Okay, see, usually back then you were either, and so I made attempts to actually explain this, and the response was, well, no, I have these studies and this background, and it's like, yeah, but I was born and raised in New Jersey in the 1980s and 1990s. I've known a few people. hmm Yeah. I mean, I know I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. I get that. And I didn't graduate basic training. That's fine. I haven't denied that. However, here's this kind of facts. There were these people that I grew up with and I lost as a child. They were kind of important to me. Yeah. And so I kind of have this like background of a little bit of an understanding. And so the response in this particular situation was, yes, but see, I have a college degree, and so I've gone to college, and in these studies, this aspect of, and on and on and on and on. And I was like, okay, yeah, but it doesn't change the fact that back in the day, they didn't really care. They pretty much, and sure, okay, over time, sure, you're whatever, they, meaning who I was born and raised around and stuff like that, they pretty much were, you're either a butch lesbian or you're a lipstick lesbian. That's the way they classified themselves. They didn't go into whatever, but apparently, fine, there are males who decided to appropriate certain words and okay, the machismo aspect of what they paid attention to in comparison. Okay, I understand that. So realistically, what you're saying is that if these males, in regards to heterosexual breeders, didn't do certain things, so then maybe you should just educate the breeders in comparison to somebody who's been around a little bit. I've known a few people. There's a few. Like, I don't know what you know about New York City, or New Jersey, or Pennsylvania. However, sure, I woke up in San Antonio at Fort Sam Houston. What does that have to do with anything? And so this was an actual discussion as far as this situation. It's like, yeah, except like I knew a few people. I was a beard before. And I had to, this is the irony, I had to actually explain what a beard was. And this was 2010, and it's like, who would ever think that I'd actually have to explain what a beard is to a gender studies person who, as far as I understand, is a lesbian, doesn't like being called a lipstick lesbian. Is it because of my hair? Am I being gender stereotyped because my hair is short? Like, this was an actual thought process where I'm like, okay, so is it because I have a male hairstyle and because of the smoking aspect, the possibilities of my voice, and then because of military, is it that, because I'm very contemplative, I've always been this way as a child, even, well before waking up from my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. So it's one of those, okay, well, what is it that would actually be considered as? Is it because then how much of an irony, scary irony would it be for, a gender studies, lesbian, femme, words of college and stuff, to then later learn, even though I had discussed this over and over again, having been born and raised in New Jersey, I don't know what most people think of when it comes to New Jersey. Other than it's like right near, it's like it's pretty close to New York City. Yeah, kinda. Yeah, I mean, I know that there's like this whole shoreline. I know this because I've gone to it. That's why. However, I don't know what people in the state of Texas thought of when it came to the state of New Jersey. So it was as it was. I mean, it is what it is. So in regards of California, in certain references, because you have the DFW area, which in some ways you can really consider probably like the overall demographic as to personality types, the possibilities of the California type. Whereas San Antonio would be more along the lines of, New Jersey, New York City, and like ish in regards to the Pennsylvania type. As far as personality, like direct to the point, if you mess up, gonna let you know. If you're gonna throw a little temper tantrum, I'll give you something to cry about, sort of thing. And so, I grew up with my biological father, especially because he worked out of the house. So, he had his School of Bolova, graduate, certification and stuff like that, and he had his workshop in the house. So I actually grew up learning directly from, whereas my biological mother went to Prudential. And she would do that, and there was some stuff at the house when she was on call regarding information technology software, but in the realistic portions, yes, I would go to, my babysitter when certain factors up during the time frame. And so I grew up in a really weird, multifaceted way where that was the normal. And so, where my biological sister did not have that. By the time that my biological sister was born, I was going to be going into elementary school. Mike was doing more stuff where he went up to New York City or Pittsburgh or Philadelphia because of the way the work was. And then there was Anna, and so she had, that time frame regarding the birth aspects. And instead of the natural birth, she had wanted to do the C-section because she wanted time off from work instead. So she thought that getting a surgery instead of delivery was a better way for her to not have to go to work. Think about this as far as common sense. How much common sense would it be in those references? Just think about that. That was the level she was willing to go to as to getting time off from work. So then I was in 5th grade at this point in time. And some stuff happened. I've already gone over those factors, so you can take that in consideration as far as what length of laziness she was willing to go to not have to actually have a real job. Whereas in comparison, I'm like, oh yes, I got invited to go to Marine and Science Technology School. Yay, I'm gonna be so rare. In comparison, so look at the differences to that concerned aspect. So then there's, Patricia, who got raised more along the lines of Anna. And so those who have those experiences, you can tell the difference, obviously. So in reference to the difference between Hollywood, California types, more like Anna and Patricia, hey, don't California Texas. Well, if Anna and Patricia are more the Hollywood types, let's be honest on that, don't California Texas. Hey, well, whatever. And so, right, it's so scary. Right. Just saying. So then you have, New Jersey, which is not, obviously California is a big state. So New York City and the New York State area for certain, locations, such as the fashion district and so on and so forth, you have more of a blunt and to the point sort of viewpoint. So in comparison of the fluffies where it's like, the way Anna is with Patricia, especially back then. So instead of telling Patricia regarding dance, you suck, in comparison to doing, maybe something different, although I guess maybe, I'll just leave that up to that concern. So, instead of being like, you need to actually do this and this and this and this and this, or, no, you won't ever get into Juilliard because you don't have the posture, you don't have the stamina, you don't have the form, you don't have this, you don't have that. We moved to Illinois. That's the very California sort of way when you really think about it, because instead of just being like, for example, in order to go to the international Taekwondo competition when I was 12 years old, I had to go through the circuit and I had to place in first, second, or third in both sparring and form. And I only got second and third place as a green belt as a 12-year-old in the international competition at the time. But there's the facts that, okay, Mike said, well, you didn't get first. All right, well, yeah, that's true. I also am not going to do another competition because there's no actual way to improve, in my opinion. There's self-improvement, but there's no way to improve in regards to actual placement. And so that still is my opinion regarding that, because I was a green belt. I was 12 years old. I was in 8th grade. And so the lowest ranking belts that I went against, the brown belt with a black stripe and tape regarding the international competition. You can't really improve upon that because you can't go backwards in time. Obviously by the time of the next possibility of a competition, I would be older and I would be a higher ranking belt. And while the plausibility of other aspects, well, there's no actual improvement except for self-improvement. And so, okay, fine, that is what it is, all right, okay, and I can accept that. I did way back then, and it was just, okay, what I need to do for myself, what I can, and where I, can assist in other references, okay. Well, I took that in that reference, and then I had already been myself, obviously, for that point in time. And when it came to going up to New York City, and certain whatevers, it was one of those, well, those who, especially in the Broadway areas, where a lot of the, if I can make it there, I can make it anywhere, sort of whatevers. They didn't have that fluffiness that California does. So, you had a bunch of people who, unlike in California, where, we can find something else for you to feel whatever, and in New York City, especially with New Jersey nearby, it's one of those, you'll either do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or bye. So that's kind of how that is. Unless you actually have the capacity of other stuff that you can do, your choices are A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or bye. Yeah, sort of thing. And if you're offended by that because your background isn't whatever, or your whatever the situation is, it's very blunt and to the point. It's not an area, especially with how many, as far as the New York City and New Jersey area, it's not an area where it's fluffy. It really isn't, in comparison. And granted, okay, I haven't lived in Hollywood, haven't gone to Hollywood or anything like that, but I pretty much envision Hollywood being very similar to the way Anna was in comparison to the way Mike was. So Mike, it was more along the lines of, well, that's not first place. I mean, sure, you got second place in sparring regarding in an international competition, and yeah, that's nice. You got first and second mainly in all the other areas, but like that is what it is. All right, fine. However, in regards of form, okay, third place, and I was 12 years old. All right, well, I can accept those factors in comparison to where my biological sister being, I'm gonna go to Juilliard and I'm gonna do this. Well, she couldn't sing, so how are you gonna go and be on Broadway? Unless you're a backup area, obviously. And so the difference is, we moved to Illinois. Instead of Patricia just being told no. Now, she actually was by a guy from New York City. And that didn't go very well. The temper tantrums, the crying, and, seems like something Hollywood might understand. And all these particular factors and these different situations, and it was one of those, just because whatever, your mommy and daddy might tell you you're special, that's nice. That's your mommy and daddy. That's not the rest of the world. Or at the very minimum, it's not the rest of New York City or not the rest of whatever you're looking at getting into. And so we had it out, meaning nobody at this point, I wouldn't think there's many who would be surprised. And so when I called my biological sister out in reference to this situation at the dance studio, where this guy had his opinion from his experience and his background and all these facts, my biological sister was pissy and temper tantrumy. And, maybe there are some people who have knowledge of this. And so the back and forth at the time was as it was. And so one day shortly after this meeting, okay, so maybe all scary, but not really. Unless you consider the truth scary and because that's the truth. So Patricia had said, one of these days, I'm going to be a star. I've already gone to New York City and I've made it there. No, you haven't. You haven't made it there. You haven't made it around New York City. You've had Anna holding your hand. You've had Mike holding your hand. You haven't been walking around the 5 boroughs. And I just A, B, C, D, E, F, G, just lay it out. And she's like, you know what? When I make it, you're just not going to be allowed to be there. Okay, but are you going to be good enough anyway? Whatever? And so I go into all these different things. And realistically, probably you wouldn't want me there because you'd know that, well, I'm me in comparison to you. And so realistically, all you would do is show how petty you are. And it's funny because your name is Patty, so, whatever. And so if you're going to be petty, that's you being petty. But then just remember, if you do that, I will not assist you when you need my assistance. I want you to understand that. Because if you do anything petty and cause me and or any that I'd consider as mine, if you cause any needless problems, I promise you, all of your pettiness, Patty, will go to you. Because I will not tolerate certain things. I will not feel sympathy for you, and it will come back and it will haunt you for the rest of your days. It won't matter where you go. It won't matter what you do. You cause any certain needless problems because you think that you're better than, just keep that in mind. So you won't ever, if you do this, if you ever complain that I wasn't there, and you made the choice not to invite me, you will not ever have any reason to complain. Just keep that in mind. And her response was, I'll do whatever I want. I can just bat my eyes and everybody will feel bad for me. Yeah. Think about the wording. And yes. That's what it will be. And instead of thinking about how that impacts other people, you just won't care. Because why would you? If you're only doing this out of bitterness to me, just keep that in mind. That foundation that you're setting is because of your own pettiness. And that's just sad because there are the realities. And so if it ever gets to the point where you actually need me to assist you, especially if it's an in-person, face-to-face, in-person sort of defense for stuff that you've caused, I promise you, I won't. And her response was, you don't mean that. You would need me, and da-da-da. She went on and on and on. I said, I don't think you understand. So mind you, I've already, at this point in time, I've earned 2nd and 3rd place. And her lack of understanding as to what level it actually was, her response was, well, I was in a recital. That's not the same. a recital for a dance school is not the same as placing second and third in an international competition at all. And so her response was, well, she was going to do all these other things. Okay, I'm letting you know that that guy who worked in wherever in New York City let you know that your posture was off. Let you know that your legs were doing whatever they were doing. Informed you that you didn't have the extensions that were needed, and just listed, and I wasn't even being mean. That's the thing. She started crying because she thought whatever she thought. Anna had, oh, it's okay, you'll whatever, and you'll whatever. And I'm sure there are people at this point in time who have this understanding as to how this actually was. And so it was at those times, and mind you, this is in the 1990s. This is 1996, 1997. And so this amount of development, I guess, if you want to call it that, was what I was dealing with and seeing. And it was one of those, if your choice is going to be that, if you are going to be petty, causing me needless problems just because I sided with this whatever, you're going to learn how bad that's going to be. Because if you think that just because of these one or two factors, that is enough for you to take a stand in that regard, you better be capable to actually back it up. Because if you can't, you are going to suffer. And so by the time, fast forwarding later, I find out that she had graduated college. All right, well, I wasn't invited to the college graduation. I learned that she graduated high school. Well, excuse me, I had a subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain at the time, and I was a little busy taking care of my son and my daughter. So if she complained that I wasn't at her high school graduation, and the choice was, in reference to Mike and Anna, to not invite me to the graduation, well, don't complain. Because if the complaint was, as to that point in time, you don't have any ground to stand on. Because if you knew that I wouldn't know, why would I? Additionally, in that reference, what would that matter to me? Because why would you think that Patricia's graduation from high school would matter to me in comparison to that subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain? So that would be probably around 2004. So let's see, so I had been awake from my coma maybe a total of 4 years from my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. I still had that subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain, and it was still extremely visible in regards of my MRI and CAT scans. I had my son within 1 year of being awake from my coma, and my daughter within 2 years of being awake from my coma, with that subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain, which in turn, as far as just those factors, only 2 years later, if it's in 2004, that lets you know about that pettiness. Then, with the knowledge that I deal with headaches and migraines, as well as fine memory deficits and cognitive disorders, that lets you know the pettiness. On top of the fact that I didn't go to my own high school graduation, I fought to be capable to graduate early because I had wanted to attend Marine and Science Technology School. If you are going to be upset because I rebelled against what they wanted in regards of Mike, Anna, and Patricia, as far as the school that I was invited to in a field of research that was most ideal to what my preferences actually are and were back then, but still remain, well then don't complain that I fought as much as I did regarding St. John Vianney High School to graduate an entire year early. It was actually a year and a half by the amount of work, because they had a college system scheduling. So instead of instead of a 4-year, certain people, if they had completed certain levels, they could actually graduate in 2 years. So then it's in 2.5 years, depending on. So I had fought to be capable to graduate early, go do my own thing, because I wanted to attend Mass. And when it was found out, as far as the guidance counselor meeting, because this is part of why I was moved in this reference, because I was going to be capable to graduate in 1998. I had completed that level of schoolwork. But because of the religion and stuff like that, and then having taken Latin classes, that was the situation regarding being moved from New Jersey to Illinois. They would have had 2 different high school graduations. This is how greedy my biological mother and biological father and biological sister were, because this was the level up. So then when it came to Crystal Lake, Illinois, I didn't want to be there. I was already on my path to go, and I wasn't interested in anything else. They wanted me to settle down in Illinois. No, thank you. No, I'm not interested. They wanted me to get involved with all the... I'm not interested. I'm not. I'm going to go do things my own way. Not looking at any of these other factors. I don't care about your opinions. And if people don't like the fact that I'm strong-willed, well then you know what? You probably can't handle being with me anyway. Because if you can't appreciate my work and my accomplishments, then you don't need to be with me. If you have a problem with my work, then just think what you can't handle. That's realistically the facts. So when it came to, that, if in reference to 3 different situations, because if the aspects of, I could have graduated in 1999, but because Mike, Anna, and Patricia and their whining and complaints, they had 3 specific graduations that they could have had in regards of high school in reference to my graduation. Anna and Mike wanted to do the garbage that they chose to do. They literally denied themselves of that. That's their fault. They have no one to blame except for themselves. So when it comes to Patricia, if that was whatever regarding high school, okay, well, in 2004, if that was the year that she graduated high school, I was kind of busy. If they chose not to inform me, or if ignorantly they told my now dead ex-husband, knowing the situations of, well, if he attended, there's the proof in regards to what I actually dealt with regarding my biological sister in that capacity. It lets you know everything in those references. Fast forward to whenever she could have graduated college. Well, if I wasn't informed, which I know I wasn't, that's not my fault, that's hers. So you don't have the capacity to actually complain. Because if in that other capacity were Mike and Anna in the opposite of, well, that's your fault. Don't be surprised that there's needless drama when 2 parents are pitting children against one another. That's irresponsible, that's immoral, that's ridiculous, that's pathetic, and why would you think that would ever be a good idea unless you were that ignorant? So then, whatever as far as those educational factors, my son and my daughter didn't get to see that the same way. But then, if they involved my son and my daughter without my consent, because they wouldn't ever have had the legal authority to do so, by official standards, because of the fact that I have been the sponsor. My dead ex-husband was not the sponsor at all, whatsoever. No matter how much my biological mother, biological father, and or biological sister may have wished, he wasn't the sponsor. That's why his ID card was a dependent ID card in comparison. So my biological mother, biological father, and biological sister stirred up needless drama, hypothetically, just because of their own ignorance. and pettiness. Because instead of just actually being truthful, this is how they were. And so they legally had absolutely no authority to ever get involved, no matter what they wish, at all. They might wish otherwise, and those ignorances are their fault. So that fully needs to be brought to the light. And that might be scary, but I'm sure I'm not the only one who has ever dealt with that needless type of drama. And so that sort of stuff needs to be brought out, because that sort of garbage is exactly that. Garbage. Those types that purposefully do so, thinking that puts them in a better position, it doesn't. It shows in the long term who you actually are and where you don't actually assist progression. You just aren't good enough to get into Juilliard or get into dancing or whatever the aspects of as to the Patricia types. Because if your preference is to do all these other things instead, that's your problem. This is the difference between elected officials and politicians. And yes, while I know that there are certain productions put on in those references, it doesn't change the fact of these other situations. And so in these aspects of where my biological sister had just been that way, I know I'm not the only one who has dealt with that needless type of garbage. My son and my daughter shouldn't have ever had to go through that. And now when you take in consideration, okay, since March 2020, well, here you go. Journal blog updates on my website, www.susanmeeling.com. Any needless problems to my work automatically is a federal investigation regarding that. Every one of them. There's no excuse to be involved with my work at all. In reference to my biological mother, biological father, biological sister, and or any of their associates regarding the Millers. No matter what. So that needs to be fully brought to the light, because I didn't invite those people into my life. I didn't ever give them authority at all, and I wouldn't, because informed consent has to be informed. I wouldn't ever be a part of those people knowingly because of quite a few factors. So if in the references of thinking that similar garbage regarding the San Marcos exit 200 sort of situation that shows those types of people being needless problems. So what my son, my daughter, and I dealt with because of that little boy that they consider whatever, that's those needless problems. My daughter needlessly went through that garbage. And if that association regarding that proves additional problems regarding in the state of Texas. Don't pretend you actually care about Texas or Texans if you did any needless stuff regarding my work. That's just the facts. Do not ever pretend you are a Texan or care about the state of Texas if there was any problems from anybody associated in that capacity of. I won't believe that at all, because nobody who actually cares, once again, it goes to that. Don't pretend you have compassion. Don't pretend you have human decency. Don't pretend that you actually care, because nobody who actually cares about what I went through or my son went through or my daughter went through would ever be that level. Nobody who actually cares about the water in the state of Texas either would do that, especially with the knowledge of my work. So those particular aspects, in addition, would prove themselves in whatever sort of boat aspect or water And that would be those people's fault. Fully. I already went over it. You know, whatever pipelines of whatever in those capacities, that would be their fault. Remember, there are the issues I have brought forward. So people needlessly involving themselves need to stop. I have had the right to stand my ground. And if in the hypothetical as to how my son, my daughter, and I dealt with what we dealt with has anything to do with those people, regarding the Millers, there is not many ways for them to actually fix and repair that in the correct capacities of. And there are only the ways in which actual justice occurs. So any needless problems only compounds the additional charges in comparison. So, you know, first and foremost, you've got my Medal of Honor art project. Well, why would you involve yourself with my Medal of Honor art project if you caused my son, my daughter, and or I any needless problems? You best stay out of my work. You have no authority or right to be involved whatsoever. I don't care what some of those people might think. It's not in your religious aspects. It's mine. You don't have the rights that in that capacity. And since in the 10 Commandments, as well as the constitutional rights, because it's together, it's both. No, you were not invited specifically. So, you know, here's that scary part. Today is the 6th of May, 2022. It's a Friday. What is 6 plus 7? When you take that in consideration. See, this is why when I ask for assistance, I inform you to contact me back so I can actually inform you what I actually need in comparison to you assuming. This is a fact. So those types that think that they know better because of whatever the current aspects are, I'm not looking at just the current time frame. Again, I had a nightmare when I was a child in 2nd grade. I have proven to have sight as far as that's concerned. So when I have repeatedly been proven as to prophesying, at that point in time, when certain things are as they are, you just need to stay out of my way in every capacity thereof, each and every day. So if you aren't going to actually ask me what I actually need, and you know without a doubt that I have prophesied and been accurate, you causing any needless problems, whether to my website, my journal blog, my official YouTube videos, my official YouTube channel, my intellectual property rights thereof, that Superman comic situation regarding my ownership always, permanently. So any wishful thoughts are exactly that, because there are the proven facts. So when the prophesying that I have done, which I've already discussed in person, face-to-face in person, as well as put into writing, then there's the aspects of my scuba diving. Additionally, if other people didn't know, let's say, and this is where I'm going to get scary, okay? You ready? So, it's known that I have been honest, clarified knowing the difference as to utilizing metaphors, knowing the difference, being creative, knowing the difference as to officially prophesy. I've known this. Nobody's asked me. Nobody has ever thought to ask me, because why would they? What would that translate to as to that scary aspects? Comparison to just realizing the facts. And so all of these needless involvements that I've already brought forward, and you can either make the choice to not go down a path or to do self-fulfilling prophecy. And so if instead, and thinking that self-fulfilling prophecy is better in comparison, well, I've already prophesied, now haven't I? And so in the only ways that you would be capable to have a different outcome is through what would be proven in regards of. So these people in this hypothetical, maybe they didn't know anything regarding, because let's say Mike, Anna, and Patricia had lied, hypothetically. And instead of acknowledging that I had prophesied as a child, not just in reference to 1993 prophesying, not just in reference to 2001 prophesying, not just those times. You know, there's Old Tenet Presbyterian Church. As far as the basement. So, you know, there's my Medal of Honor art project trips. And in these different areas, I flat out have said, there should not be this. Because this is the only way to do it, and you only go through one person. You have to ask. You have to. If you choose not to, though, I cannot be held responsible for your choices. Because, sure, can I understand you might be protective? Well, what are you actually protective of? Because if you're protective of me, you're gonna respect by RSVPing as to that aspect. If you don't care, and you're just one of those types of politicians, then don't pretend you're protecting me. Because the only way you would be capable to utilize that is by actually asking me. Because I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm working on. I have these experiences in my background. I have the training. So anybody that would think otherwise, if you want to claim that you are being protective, again, what are you being protective of? Are you being protective of your view of perception? Which is most likely the answer regarding those. Because if you actually cared about what I was doing, if you actually cared about what I was working on, and if you actually cared about me, you would do things my way. You would have the common sense to actually ask me what would be needed. So there's this show, Guardian Assholes, and if there were individuals who said you shouldn't do it that way, you should have listened. Because I told those individuals in reference to Joey and Andrew Fast, and there was this little brunette male who was running around certain areas. We were at a bar area. And he had not a little camera, he had one of those cameras that had the microphone on it, a little brunette. He almost looked like the male at the tennis match where I had called my son over. And so that little teenage male with that arrogant type of douchebag persona had seemed to be around the area. Don't know who he is. I could see how he might be related to Patrick Kennedy in comparison.
which would be the irony of a self-fulfilling prophecy when I wasn't even writing about him. But he would, in those vain sorts of ways in comparison. And so in those capacities of that whatever, because then of course there's the situations of the boxing location where the guy was from Pennsylvania somewhere. I don't know where Patrick's from. I don't really care. And so if there was that, well, in that time frame of telling Joey, that male, as to him having been from Boeing, as he said, and then Andrew Fast, as far as the male that was in the Army, I had told them if they wanted to be a part of it, they had to ask me what was needed. Out in the open. So since that had not occurred, since I was not asked, what does that translate to? So here's a little bit of that scary, that little rar, as far as that's concerned. So today is the 6th of May, 2022. And in 7 days, it will be another Friday. And so I don't know what the suspicious aspects are for certain people, but this was, my Medal of Honor art project trips that I was referring to. And so I can have leeway. I can do that. That's me. There's other situations though. So if some people, for example, since I had sent my books to certain locations, well, they have the leeway. They do. The individuals I spoke with officially, though, they don't have that leeway. Why would they think they could have that leeway when they were in person, face-to-face, in person informed? And in regards of that little boy, as far as that. Because how MK Ultra would it be? So I knew some guys in the 1980s and 1990s who ran around screaming Adrian. I didn't understand why, but it was as it was regarding that. They'd usually be coming out of a boxing location or a gym area, which I don't know if there's any MK Ultra references regarding that. And so, but that's something that those people would know in comparison to me. And so if there was any needless involvement other than that answering machine message that was on that tape for 60 minutes in that regard, after what that particular individual did in front of my son and my daughter, as far as Christmas was concerned, and all of those other immature, ignorant aspects, because why would someone such as Patrick Kennedy ever have common sense about what is considered appropriate? I mean, I wasn't even dating him that long, when you really think about it. So from the time frame, essentially, of less than 10 months, he failed that massively. And so I had warned him to fix and repair himself. But, he thought he knew better. I'm going to guesstimate he's learned that he didn't. So like, for example, if he's one of those bitter exes types, those. So in reference to not realizing what I'd already dealt with, though he was informed of at the time. So 2009, I earned my 26 scuba diving certifications. And I had landed at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico multiple times after taking care of clearing up the waters and healing the waters in the state of Texas in different areas. Before, of course, then going out to the Atlantic area of the ocean, regarding out from Boca and then the Vandenberg. And so I had taken care of this stuff since I was young. And so the aspects, additionally, that it was known in reference to a few other things he had seen at the Gulf of Mexico area, that I went to go handle stuff in the water. So whether or not he was intelligent enough to realize that, that's a whole other situation. So, but in 2009, there's the barbecue, and then all of a sudden McCoy Elementary School, and having to have my ex-brother-in-law go into the details of firearms. And that whole thing. Then there's the situations in 2010, and by then I had to move. My house was on the market because that was it. My biological mother and biological father and Philip Olmsted would know whatever aspects of, because I wasn't informed while I was taking care of the lease agreement in the Austin area of Texas. And so I was informed that the police showed up. Well, I don't know what police. They wouldn't give me the information. They didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to speak about it in truth. I did what I could to remain calm. And Philip Olmsted would be capable to discuss the weather while I did what I could to remain calm. And my VW Beetle, as far as that response. So then, fast forward in regards of my re-engagement to my fiance at the time and stuff like that. And then the needless problems as soon as it was found out, because my fiance at the time, both times, when it came to Christmas at Holly Lake, he knows how my biological sister, biological mother, and biological father were. He'd be capable to compare those situations to the first time he met those people, in addition to the scuba divers during my scuba dive work. Specifically, though, the polar bear scuba dive in January of 2010, which, of course, regarding a few other factors, if his sister and those situations, because she's law enforcement, I don't know what factors there would have been in addition that Mike and Anna would have to take in consideration. And so that's a different factor because, the sexism and feminazism regarding my biological mother and biological father. So if they didn't think and they decided to be rude to a female law enforcement officer, well, that would be for them to deal with in comparison, because there would be no reason or cause or excuse that would be viable as to those factors. And so while I was taking care of what I needed to, because my daughter has been in the hospital and all these other situations, because why would there actually be genuine assistance for me in comparison to what I was dealing with after the Fort Worth Zoo and the gorilla costume, or maybe that looks like a Sasquatch? Because why would any individual with common sense ever think to just ask me about my scuba diving? Because, there's that November 2009 time frame of those capacities. And so additionally, in regards to having defended myself after my then fiance the first time went to basic training at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, all that, other factors of, but fast forward to 2011, and there's the Bank of America Tower issue regarding the phone call. There also was in the Austin area a time where there was a truck situation that Titty Baby Philly would know about. But additionally, in regards to those factors of, the Bank of America and whatever company situation, and those, needless problems regarding that, because why would an individual who couldn't take a binky out of his mouth when on land actually speak, having an actual discussion in comparison to certain types, those who would try to claim that they were being protective, but instead wouldn't be. Because why would you ever think that you could actually be protective when you don't actually know? And so in those hypotheticals in that reference to, if in regards of the time frame, then there's, 2011 and the phone situation, which wasn't my fault, but I was blamed wrongly for it. Then the situations in regards of the Irving driving around and that factor. And then, having to defend myself, because what is it to actually have someone defend me? I don't know. I really don't. In person, face to face, in person, I haven't had that luxury at all ever. At any point in time, no. Even in Washington State. I mean, there is one point in time where it did get broken up a bit, because there was a point in time where I was outside in the smoking section, and this male who was wearing an odd dress blue sort of whatever kind of looked almost like Cactus Jack or Jeffrey Kirkendall Jr. to a degree. Kind of almost looked like that, but whatever. And those needless problems where he was saved by a guy named Alan, and then when Jeremy came out, he was saved again, and then Chuck, he saved him again, because that was the only, I'm not saying that I know how to defend myself at all. I mean, it's been since I was 12 years old, since I was in an international taekwondo competition. It's way back when. I'm older now. So, as long as I wasn't doing certain things, there wasn't an issue in those references. Otherwise, well, it is what it is. So that guy was saved by those three at Sapphire. Yeah. By so much. By a lot. But there were these situations that stirred up needlessly at that point in time. So if Cactus Jack, because of that pop culture garbage, because he already had the pattern of behavior in regards of, the Mad Max, Alamo Drafthouse, 151, and since his brother went into the army as an officer, as he had failed out of ROTC regarding UTSA, those types. So, those types. Yeah, those types. Knowing the garage situation and how it was not consensual, knowing that. Because all you have to do is pay attention to being literally up on the stair block and every aspect of every physical attribute having been described. Because, what would that civil aspect be? But my biological mother, biological father, and biological sister appreciated those dress blues in comparison to paying attention to me being the sponsor. Needless problems. Yeah. And I stood up against that, obviously. As soon as I could get myself away, like take a hint, that's not a hint. Those references. So, my work is my work that I haven't been paid for in regards of my books, my royalties and all that, because I didn't do that for free. That wasn't. That's why I arranged things for myself, because I knew what I needed to get taken care of, because I knew my situation. Yet again, those people who think that they know what they're doing and they don't, and they only do a bunch of needless stuff because they think they know better in comparison to actually ever speaking with. Because why would you ever think that you would know what I need if you don't actually speak with? Because if it's in the similarity of that stupid leather vest, a massive failure. A massively huge failure. Just in that regard. Because while he thought it wasn't that big of a deal, why would you ever think of what I would know from my childhood and my teenage years? You know, similar to that gender studies type. Why would you ever think about where I was born and raised? Because what would be about where I was born and raised compared to you reading a damn book? Sure, you could have some personal experiences after reading a book, though, compared to. So we're that sort of situation in comparison. You know, because what would be important about where I was born and raised in New Jersey? What would be important about those factors as to actually being respectful of? Because why would you ever think that doing anything the way in those references would ever be considered as respectful? I mean, especially that type in reference to Patrick. Because couldn't even get that point back in reference to 2011. Having explained that and his temper tantrum as to ever thinking outside of his own arrogance and haughtiness. And so it wouldn't be a surprise if he would go complain to his mommy, because of how that was back then, of where he wanted me to meet his mom to tell his mom what he did. And then he wanted me to tell his mom that I told him to contact her grandson, his son, and actually take care of stuff. Because instead of doing the, actual, the paternity payment aspect, because he has his employment was as it was. And of course, if he had actually spoken the truth instead, and actually had said, that's a trust fund, baby, well then guess what? He wouldn't have been lectured so many times. And they wouldn't have dealt with certain things. But that requires being truthful. And then that's needless drama that he stirred up on his own. That's his fault for lying directly to me. Because if that's the case back then, that's literally all he had to say. But if he was too arrogant, slothful, ignorant, so on and so forth, that's his fault, literally. And responsibilities in those references. So then there's a few other factors to take in consideration. Because of course he got along with Patricia. Why would that be a non-surprise? Because of that stereotype of those types. Regarding that, Hollywood aspect. Because in comparison to the California way, I'm very much the East Coast way. It's blunt and to the point. It's no dancing around the situation. It's, I said this. This is the way it's supposed to be. I don't care about your feelings at all, because that's the facts. So then when you take in consideration, he himself had said, well, you know, if you really think it's that much of an issue, go ahead and tell my mom. Okay, go ahead, tell her anything you want. Oh, okay, don't blame me. Don't ever blame me to challenge me to tell your mom anything I want. Because that's what it was, and his mom and anybody who knows him would know how those temper tantrums would be. He literally, after the leather vest situation, he flat out told me he didn't care who I told anything of. He dared me to. Well, there's this guy that I was engaged to twice, and he dared me to make something strong as far as the bed I created. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. Do not challenge me. If I say I'm gonna go do something, you should probably just ask if you can assist. Otherwise, I'm gonna make something pretty strong. You don't need to challenge me, because I challenge myself a bit. So, you know, he said it. That's not my fault. That's his fault. By every capacity of. So after the Deloitte situation, on top of that, and the lodge problem, you know, then there was the 60-minute answering machine tape on top of everything else that I was already dealing with. Yeah, I don't know what, you know, common sense is from other people. Yeah, I really don't. I haven't had that luxury, apparently, because that requires certain things. Yeah, I haven't had that luxury. So if Patrick had aligned himself with my biological mother and or biological father and or biological sister and or ex-in-laws, that's their fault. Fully. 100%. Because they didn't have the right. They didn't have the authority to. At all. Simply from the fact that they were officially informed as to the justice of the peace, and I did everything I could to get my son and my daughter and I away from that. And yet those people didn't seem to understand what was wrong with that. Think about those facts. That in the United States of America, in the state of Texas, those people didn't see anything wrong with that. What are women's rights? What are civil liberties? What is human decency? What is common sense? What is common courtesy? What is respect? What is etiquette? If I ever have the luxury of that, I'll let you know. Thanks for tuning in to my official YouTube channel. Go to my website, www.susanmealing.com. Subscribe to my official YouTube channel. Share my official YouTube video links. If you're going to comment, do make sure to have etiquette and respect. Remember, today is the 6th of May, 2022. And in 7 days, it will be another Friday with a different date. So, you guys have a good one. 6th of May, 2022.